Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Owen Barwell. I am the Deputy Chief Financial Officer here at the Department. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the Department to hear and share with you our FY13 budget and share that with you. Before we move on with some ground rules here, I just want to thank everyone from the Department that's participated here in making this event happen. It's been a coordinated effort across a number of organizations, not just the Office of the CFO, but with our media, public affairs folks, congressional folks as well. We're going to hear from the Secretary very shortly. He will then hand over to here so we can hear from our undersecretaries to talk about what we're doing on energy, science, and NNSA. There are no Q&As here, but there are breakout sessions for you to go to between 3:15 and 4. There will be a reception between 4 and 4:45 in the museum in the front of the building and the entrance to the building, so where you'll be able to freshen up and have a chance to mingle with folks in a more sociable environment. And so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Secretary Chu.
All right, thank you, Owen. And again, as part of our fiscal responsibility and austerity, we begin to wear multiple hats. So we use my laptop, and I do the audio-visual. Let me begin by quoting the President. And in his State of the Union address, he said the following: "Think about the America within our reach, a country that leads the world in educating its people, an America that attracts a new generation of high-tech manufacturing and high-paying jobs, a future where we're in control of our own energy and our security and prosperity aren't tied to unstable parts of the world, an economy built to last." So this budget reflects those goals. It invests in clean energy and in safely harnessing our energy resources. It supports science and innovation. It saves money for families and businesses by saving energy. It cuts costs of U.S. manufacturers through more efficient operations, and it reduces nuclear dangers and environmental risks. So let me walk you through this. As you know, we've embarked upon first through a long-term strategic plan and then followed by a much more detailed study called the Quadrennial Technology Review, both led by former Undersecretary Steve Chu. These are excellent reports that begin to outline long-term views about where we should be going in energy, and hopefully these quadrennial reviews will become a basis, as the quadrennial reviews in defense and state have become a basis for their ongoing continued plans. So our budget request is for $27.2 billion. And it reflects some tough choices, to cut back in some areas and to invest in other areas. All right, so what are we cutting? President's budget asks for $4 billion in cutting unnecessary fossil fuel subsidies. It scales back on a project, a sodium-ion battery project, which is actually a success story because this project is now being picked up very rapidly by the commercial sector, that company that we funded. And it shows that as the private sector picks it up, it no longer needs government funds, and we've done our job. We also cut back on projects that don't work, and over the past 2 years, RPE, Fossil Energy, and ERE have discontinued funding for a combined total of nearly 35 projects that don't reach milestones. Now, don't take this, oh my gosh, we're investing in more things that don't work. We invest in research, and let me say that if you invest in research, if everything worked, or even 90% of what worked, we're not doing our job in investing in the right things. And so we are investing in things that don't work, and we're monitoring very closely, and with the full consent and agreement, and sometimes even enthusiastic agreement with our industrial partners. They say, yes, that did not work. We agree. Let's move on and do something else. And so this is a very good news story. It means we are on top of things, especially if you think about what RPE does. They have quarterly reviews of all the projects they fund. And so this is part of what we're doing. We're also investing where we can have the greatest impact. For example, we believe that onshore wind is a success story, that industry is it's highly developed by industry. These are becoming known technologies. They continue to improve. The good news story is that onshore wind, for a given type of wind site, for example, 7 cents a kilowatt hour is only for a Category 4 wind site. It's not the best category. And right now, even in that category wind site, onshore wind is the second least expensive form of new energy available in the open market. Natural gas is the least expensive, but onshore wind is second. So this is going to continue. Offshore wind is considerably more expensive, so we're shifting our resources to making that a financial reality. We're very committed to fiscal responsibility and management. As an example, if you look at what we fund in the Office of Science, in Energy, in ARPA-E, we're now beginning to say, let's take a view of what we fund as an integrated view. What are the things we should be funding that the private sector would not fund, where we could make the most difference and the most impact? If the private sector is investing hundreds of millions of dollars in a particular direction, we have to ask ourselves the question, what's our added value? And so as we do this, we've organized along business lines so that our program managers on the technology side become increasingly acquainted and intimately acquainted really with the projected business models of what's going on out there. And so we've also designed coordinating entities that cut across those lines of business. For example, solar energy in all forms, photovoltaic, solar thermal. What are we funding in ARPA-E? What are we funding in energy? What are we funding in the Office of Science? Oops. And as a line of business. We're also doing this with batteries, and we're doing it with biofuels, we're doing it with manufacturing, we're doing it with, one by one, we're incorporating this coordinated effort. We're also trying to save taxpayers' money by improving the efficiency of our operations. We've avoided $3 million in costs through reduced travel, more teleconferencing. We've instituted non-refundable airline ticket purchases. You probably all know out there that if you buy 4 or 5 weeks in advance a non-refundable ticket, that ticket could cost 30, 40, 50% less than the kind of ticket you can buy in the last week fully refundable. Most of the trips can be scheduled in advance. Most of the times, for most people, you're not going to be making changes. And so we think we can save tens of millions of dollars per year this way. We are, through strategic procurements, using economy of purchasing power, economy of scale of purchasing power, we believe we've saved roughly $330 million in these procurement savings. We're overhauling the way we communicate the outside web with our interfaces, our web interfaces, and we're saving $10 million on that. The Department of Energy, like many other federal agencies, has a large vehicle fleet in headquarters Germantown. We're decreasing that fleet by 35%, and each of the laboratories and contractors out there, we've also asked to decrease their fleet by 35% relative to 2005. Some of the labs have already done that, and the others are working towards doing that. Again, the ownership of those cars, the maintenance of those cars can be greatly reduced. We're also trying to make ours more efficient by reducing the time to hire. And we've reduced it by more than 40% so far, and we'll continue to make strides. We want to see what we can do to see how we can improve the transfer of the discovery and invention of those things we sponsor, both in the universities and the national labs, and how we can actually get it out into the private sector, into the marketplace, picked up by industry. We have so-called CRADA agreements, that stands for Cooperative Research and Development Agreements. And we're trying to streamline the process that when a company wants to work with a national laboratory, it goes into a negotiated process of what is actually in that CRADA contract. It has been noted that there can be very time-consuming, and we want very much to streamline and reduce the time of that negotiation. In these CRADAs, it used to be that we would demand that the company put in three months of funding in advance to be held by the contractor, the national laboratory, just in case something might go wrong and there would be a loss of funding of something. So it's kind of an insurance for that funding. The trouble with that is that if you're a smaller company, you may, cash is very tight. You may not have 3 months of forward funding at your disposal. So we reduced that to 2 months, and we're looking at possibly reducing that to 1 month, but still keeping in mind very carefully that we don't want to subject the taxpayer to something that could go wrong. So we're not increasing any risk in this. For example, the contractor, if they say, well, we're very confident, we have a good partnership relationship, the contractor can underwrite going from 2 months to 1 month. We believe in the 2 months. It's just actually modernizing, acknowledging the fact that modern business systems, you actually know what you're spending within days and weeks, not months. And so it's just catching up with technology. Let me also say that we have started America's Next Top Energy Innovator Initiative. It has several things. For example, again, it's aimed at smaller companies. If you want to take on an option agreement to license some of the national lab technologies and want to shop it around so that you can say, okay, we have the potential for licensing this patent, but we need to get investor enthusiasm. For $1,000, you can have a license fee for up to 3 patents per company, again, to lower that initial cost barrier. We want to add flexibility to licensing. In many instances, the national labs previously would insist on, if you want to license this patent, here are the attorney fees that you have to pay. These attorney fees and other licensing fees could be in the tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Again, in a small startup company, they'd rather say, well, we don't want that much cash. Are you willing to take an equity position or have a balance of some equity, some small amounts of upfront cash? Again, we're emphasizing that the technology transfer offices should be much more flexible. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and we hope that, again, that would make it much more enjoyable to be doing business with the national laboratories. Finally, we are implementing something in addition to the CRADA agreements. It's called ACT, or Agreement for Commercializing Technology. It's a pilot initiative. I think 6 or 8 national laboratories have signed on to this, and it's an alternative way of creating partnerships with industry and our national laboratories. So this is one of many examples of what we're doing. We've also initiated meetings of our national laboratories and our scientists in those labs with industry. The first one was held, it was a materials for energy workshop held at Berkeley Claremont Hotel. There was I don't know if any of you were there, but there was certainly a very enthusiastic appreciation of what we were trying to do. And there will be another one held on the role of high-performance computing in helping industry that will be held in Austin, Texas in coming future. That sounds a little redundant. So saving money by saving energy is something we think is very much in the sweet spot of how we can help the U.S. economy create jobs and make us much more competitive. So our budget calls for $310 million to improve the commercial and residential building efficiency, and it supports the President's Better Buildings Initiative to catalyze the private sector. It promotes the passage of Homestar, which provides rebates so that families can invest in energy savings that will decrease their energy bills and improve the comfort of their homes. One of the things that the President talked about in the State of the Union address, something we feel very strongly about here as well, Department of Energy, is that we do not want to cede high technology manufacturing to any country in the world. But if you look at what has been happening, this is a chart from 1990 to 2010, and it's looking at the balance of trade of high-tech manufactured goods being shipped, both imported into the United States and exported to other countries. And around 2001, we went negative. That means we're importing more high-tech manufactured goods than we are exporting. We kind of traded places with China. If you look, for example, at Germany, Germany still has a very positive high technology export balance. And so I think this is something that, given our invention, discovery, and innovation capabilities in the United States, this is something we can compete in effectively. And so to that end, our budget is calling for $290 million for advanced manufacturing on R&D in materials and processes, and it is very focused on new materials, not space-age materials that NASA is willing to pay for, but not Ford. But we're talking about materials that will actually help in this very competitive market in manufacturing. We're also talking about manufacturing supported throughout the DOE, not only in this manufacturing branch of our department in energy, but also you can see it in the grants we give out in our battery program, in our photovoltaic program, and advanced computing. Advanced computing, you might say, well, what does that have to do with manufacturing? It has a lot. We've had sterling examples of how advanced computing can help Cummins Diesel design a low pollution engine in silicon, and therefore you can dispense with a lot of the engineering cycles. Indeed, it was so successful that this effort led to designing this engine, building a prototype. The prototype worked, and they went immediately into production. Goodyear Tire designs tire treads, a similar sort of story. Using high-performance computing, you can design an advanced tire tread that outperforms the current designs, and then, bam, you go directly into production. So we think this is a very big deal, and again, an edge that we have relative to the rest of the world. We're also forming coordinated efforts in manufacturing and R&D across. This is the science and research and development of new manufacturing abilities across the Office of Science, EERE, and RPE. All right, so our motto over the last couple of years is we want to lead in clean energy technologies. We want it to be invented in America, but we can't stop there. It has to be made in America and sold worldwide. We're calling for $95 million in wind. Wind, it said wind on land is a known, well-established technology, so our funding is now tilted towards developing and lowering the price of offshore wind. We have what's called a Sunshot Initiative. It's centered within the energy efficiency renewable part of energy, but it actually is coordinated and cuts across RPE and Office of Science as well. And this budget calls for $330 million. And our budget also supports geothermal, biomass, and other renewables. We also support cross-cutting work in advanced alternative fuels, batteries, other vehicle technologies. In 2011, the amount of clean energy investment in the United States led the world, and it's the first time since 2008. We didn't lead by much. It's $55.9 billion versus $47.4 billion in China. So this leadership was in part due to government programs like the 1603 grant in lieu of tax credits and the production tax credits and others. And so the President's budget calls for an extension of that very successful 1603 program and production tax credit, and a $5 billion for the 40AC for advanced manufacturing. Again, a very successful, highly subscribed program. The budget also calls for $140 million for smart grid and energy storage technologies, grid modernization, cybersecurity. It calls for Conservative to help with the engineering in licensing small modular reactors and to engage in industry in supporting other licensing of other new reactors. And additional $155 million for carbon capture storage. Also to help in CCUS, and that's carbon capture utilization and storage. A lot of what we think can drive the ball forward in the next several years is that if you capture the carbon and you utilize it for enhanced oil recovery, that the Department of Energy can fund in the monitoring verification of where the carbon goes. We can still fund the carbon capture part and research in more efficient ways of compression. All those things are absolutely necessary for carbon capture and storage that we will need to be deploying in the future because of to mitigate our climate risks. But industry can be partnered with them in helping with this utilization, and we will still be developing a knowledge base for what we need in the future. Let me speak a little bit about natural gas. This is an EIA early release of the sources of natural gas going back from 1990 to 2010, and then projections going forward. And you'll notice, if you look at those sources of natural gas, when in 1990 there's a little bit of tight gas, but it was mostly non-associated gas, just standard drilling of gas, and non-associated offshore and onshore drilling. Now, what has happened in 2010 and going forward, it will happen increasingly, is that most of our gas supplies already are coming from what are called unconventional gas sources. And this is shale gas, tight gas, and coal bed methane. Now, I want to remind you of the role the Department of Energy played in this. This is a quote from Fred Julander, as a member of the National Petroleum Council, many other quotes from others, including some of the pioneers in the private sector who took advantage of the development of shale gas. And he said the Department of Energy was there with research funding when no one else was interested, and today we are reaping all the benefits. Early DOE R&D in tight gas, gas shales, and coal bed methane helped to catalyze the development of technologies we're applying today. So if you look at our history, the first funding actually goes even further back than this, in the middle 1970s, 74, 75. But a program started in earnest in 1977, 78. Those vertical bars are Department of Energy funding. We stopped the program in 1992. In 1991, the oil and gas exploration company, Schlumberger, picked it up. Others began to pick it up, and so we said, okay, time to let go. It's being picked up by the private sector, and you see the production of tight gas, the production of methane coal bed gas. This is a methane in coal mines, very deep coal mines, unminable, and also in shale. And so the very low prices of gas and what we think are much increases in our gas reservoirs that we see today are due to this early research. We're continuing doing research in other areas like methane hydrates, where industry is not convinced it's ever going to pay off. And so we're partnering, as we did in this late 70s and early 80s, with industry to see if this is really going to work. So again, in the spirit of natural gas on U.S. borders is a transition fuel and a transition to a cleaner energy future. We think that this would also add a lot to the U.S. economy. The Blue Ribbon Commission has come out with a set of recommendations. It was, I believe, a very thoughtful, very thorough work over a 2-year period. And so our budget calls for an alignment of what the Blue Ribbon Commission is beginning to ask for, has asked for, and certain things we have within our jurisdiction. So we have $60 million for nuclear waste R&D that aligns with the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission. The President said that the world is shifting by an innovation economy. and nobody does innovation better than America. In today's innovation economy, we also need a world-class commitment to science and research. So our budget calls for $5 billion in the Office of Science that promotes U.S. leadership. The President's budget also calls for significant increases in NSF and NIST. We have 3 hubs in operation, 2 others gearing up to be operated and in process of either starting or releasing FOAs. And our budget calls for a new hub on electricity systems. This is the coordination of transmission distribution with energy storage, with fossil fuel, with renewables. This is something that has to be considered, especially given the fact that renewable energy, and it's only a matter of time where renewable energy becomes as cost-effective as any new form of energy without subsidy. We saw in the last 3 years a decrease of 75, roughly 80% decrease in the cost of photovoltaic modules. Remarkable. And whether it's going to be this decade or maybe a little bit into the next decade, but somewhere around that time scale, solar also becomes as cost-effective as any new form of energy. If that happens, when that happens, not if, when that happens, and when wind is already knocking on the door, then you need a very different transmission and distribution system. And so this is this new hub. We also have other hubs on batteries and energy storage, critical materials, energy efficiency in buildings, modeling and simulation for nuclear reactors, and fuels from sunlight. That's sunlight going directly to liquid hydrocarbon fuels. So you have essentially an artificial plant, if you will. We also are continuing to fund the Energy Frontier Research Centers. $120 million is called for in this budget. These centers have had a very good success. They published more than 1,000 peer-reviewed papers and filed more than 90 patent applications or patent invention disclosures. Again, part of their innovation chain. The budget calls for $350 million to fund ARPA-E. ARPA-E has been very, very successful over the past several years. 11 projects that received $40 million from ARPA-E have now attracted over $200 million in private capital finance. And so this is a big success story. The whole intent, let me remind you, of ARPA-E is that we fund very innovative projects. Not all of them are expected to work. In fact, we're expecting a lot of them not to work. But it's a very short-term funding. These grants are monitored very closely, but we're looking for home runs. We're not looking for little incremental improvements. And the reception out there in the industry has been very positive. Going to nuclear security, our budget calls for $11.5 billion for NNSA to support the President's objectives. It supports the objectives in maintaining a safe, reliable, secure stockpile. It also calls for added increases in non-proliferation work, and also, for example, we are accelerating the schedule to secure vulnerable nuclear materials around the world, and we believe we're going to be able to do this within 4 years. Our budget also calls for reducing nuclear dangers, environmental risks, maintaining a safe, secure, and effective stockpile, $2.5 billion for non-proliferation work, and $5.7 billion to clean up the environmental legacy of the Cold War. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Given regard for the time here, we had originally planned to hear from the undersecretaries. They will actually be available at our breakout session. So, why don't I suggest this, that we'll call this a wrap here, again, to be mindful of people's time. That way we can get across to the breakout sessions on time, and you'll still have access to all the folks here in that environment to ask questions. So that just leaves me to thank you all again for coming. We'll see you in the breakout sessions and hopefully at the reception a little bit later too. Thank you very much.